Welcome to Amy Learns to Cook. I'm Eric, and on today's show, I want to show you how to make one of my favorite all-time comfort foods, Salisbury steak. Back in the day when I was a bachelor, before meeting Amy and all that, I used to live on Banquet TV dinners. And I used to eat Salisbury steak almost every day, and when I was feeling particularly greedy, I'd get the one that was just nothing but Salisbury steaks. It was like a family pack of them, right? Like 5 or 6 of them, and I'd eat them all. And that was just wonderful. This one here is a little watered down. It's got mashed potatoes that aren't really kind of fake, and it's got corn. But still, for $1, it was great, right? But the problem is, growing up, I realized this isn't really all that great for you. There's better ways to make it with more flavor. But back in the day, who could, it was irresistible. It's got the grill marks on it, all kinds of flavor, right? In fact, I used to even lick the thing with it because the gravy was so great, or so I thought. But these days, I know better, and I like to make you aware of that as well. So if you're still buying these, or if you're buying the Hungry Man TV dinner version, which actually comes with mushrooms on them, that's even better. But mine, I think, is a little bit better. So why don't you join me as I show you how I make my Salisbury steak. For those of you who are overseas or have just never experienced this gem of comfort food goodness, Salisbury steak is largely hamburger or ground beef mixed sometimes with pork, or in the case of Banquet TV dinner, I think they put chicken in it. But it's basically meat with filler such as breadcrumbs and also a gravy that goes over it. And then you can serve it with rice or mashed potatoes. So Salisbury steak has 2 components. It has the meat part and the gravy part. We'll get to the gravy part in just a minute. The meat part is pretty straightforward. We're going to use 1.5 pounds of ground beef. In this case, I'm using 80-20. You can obviously use leaner meat if you want. And if you do that, you might want to modify how we cook that, and I'll tell you that in a second. Other than that, for binders and fillers, we're going to add 1 egg. We're going to use 1/2 cup of breadcrumbs, seasoned or unseasoned. In this case, this is not seasoned, but I'm putting 1/8 teaspoon of pepper in there, so I just mixed it in there. I am actually using Lipton onion soup, which is a soup product, but it's not liquid. One of the biggest problems making Salisbury steak is when you add too much liquid, the patties fall apart. By adding dry ingredients, it holds it together much better. And I love the flavor that this adds. This does have quite a bit of sodium in it, so I'm going to omit adding any salt, and I'd recommend that if you are using something like this, you might want to salt to taste later. Don't add it early, okay? And we're just going to add 1 package. A box like this contains 2. We're just adding 1 at this point. And with that, we're just going to go ahead and get our hands in here and mix it all up, right? And because these are supposed to be steaks, we're going to actually form these patties in an oval shape so they resemble steaks. Now in this case, I've got a little more than 1.5 pounds, so mine are going to be just a little thicker, and that's okay. It's not an exact science. Just try to keep it as close to 1.5 pounds as you can, and you'll get maybe 6 of these things that are wonderful. If you want them thicker, then you'll get fewer than 6, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and start forming my patties here. Like I said, the basic goal is to kind of make them oval shaped, so they supposedly look like steaks. Okay, so we went ahead and formed these into 6 patties that are questionably oval, but they're good enough for me. Amy will not be eating these. I'll be eating these throughout the week as part of my lunch. Amy is a little jealous because she tried to make a ground turkey version of these, and they're awful. She said they were the single awfulest thing she's ever cooked. And as we know, that ranks up there pretty good because she can make some awful food. But they were horrible. She does not like Salisbury steaks. If you hear her on Facebook or anything complain, just take it with a pinch of salt. she has no standing in it, okay? For those of us that love it, listen to me, these are good. So without further ado, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna brown these on both sides first, and then we're gonna actually cook these in the oven. I got this on kind of a medium high heat, oops. And I'm using vegetable oil, it has a high smoke point. I don't wanna, kill these, but I do wanna get a good crust if I can, at a minimum. They're gonna look kind of pretty before we get them in the oven. If you're using 90-10 or 95-5, basically lean meat, you might wanna cook them in the pan, and then ultimately you can cook them with the gravy all in one place, because the gravy might help keep your meat a little on the moist side. Because this has plenty of fat in it, being 80-20, I actually like to finish them off in the oven, because what happens is I'm going to lose a little bit of the fat in form of grease here, and then I'm going to lose a little bit more in the oven. And what's good about that is when it does get time to put the gravy on and everything, I'm not going to have a whole lot of greasy mess. And if I did choose to put this in the gravy, I'd be afraid that some of that grease might make it greasy gravy, even though Amy says, gravy does have a certain amount of fat in it. I just don't like it to be overly greasy. So that's just my thought, and that's why I do it. And then when you see, it will look nice, right? So we're just really gonna cook this for a couple of minutes on each side, just to get them brown. We'll flip them. We'll go ahead and put them onto the cookie sheet here that we actually have lined with some parchment paper. That way it makes for easier cleanup. But if you want to be just a one pan person, then by all means, drain off your fat, put it back on a plate or whatever, get your gravy going, and then once the gravy is simmering, then you can go ahead and put your meat in there. Now I've preset the oven for 350 degrees. We're going to actually bake these until they're done, somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 160, 165 degrees. I just don't want to see any pink on the middle. I've never seen a Salisbury steak that was ever cooked medium rare. So that's going to be the telling indicator. So for right now, I'm going to go ahead and get them in there. 15 minutes I'll check on them, depending upon how thick your patties are and how long you left them on and they cooked. You don't want to cook them until they're 200 degrees and dead, right? Plus, with this onion in there, you also don't want to burn them. I mean, caramelization is one thing, but to just outright burn them is really bad. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in here, and we'll check on them shortly. While the meat is in the oven cooking, now's a great time to get the gravy going. So what I'm going to do is saute some mushrooms, because I really love mushrooms in mine. And I suppose if you're in a real big hurry, but it wouldn't be my Salisbury steak, as you would just get some cream of mushroom soup going, but I don't really think that'd be all that great. So we're going to go ahead and cook these down about 5 minutes or so, and then we'll continue with the gravy. Okay, now that the mushrooms have cooked down a little bit, and this was 1 pound of mushrooms. I removed the stems, washed them, and then sliced them up. And if you want less mushrooms, or if you don't want to make as much gravy as I am, but by all means, use half of this, right? I'm making a triple gravy recipe because I like to put it on all the steaks, but I also want to put it on the mashed potatoes as well. And a lot of recipes that you may look at have a problem with that, because they just flat out don't make enough gravy. So the one thing I like about this, and I've made it several times, is it makes plenty. So it just depends how much you want. So now that I've got the mushrooms out of there, I'm just going to leave the liquid in there. I'm just going to go ahead and put in the onions for, this is 1 medium red onion that I'm putting in there. And if you're making less gravy, then by all means, use a small onion or just half of a medium, and I'm sure it'll be fine. I just want to cook this for a moment to go ahead and help make it soft, and then we're going to go ahead and start making the gravy. Looks like the meat is ready, so I'm going to go ahead and pull it out of the oven. And you can see how it's given up a little bit more grease there, which is good, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and tint the meat here, so that way it can kind of like relax a little bit, because we always do that, right? So we got that going. We're working on the gravy here. Okay, so now this is the fun part with the gravy here. The onions, we've already made them translucent, if that's possible, with red ones. I'm going to go ahead and throw the mushrooms back in because we're ready to have fun here, right? So to this, we're going to add 3 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce. I cannot pronounce that stuff right. If you're going to make a regular recipe of this, then just 1 tablespoon. But I'm going to make a lot, so I'm adding 3. I'm adding also regular mustard powder. If you don't have the powder, then you can just use the regular, liquid stuff, except obviously it's going to have a little bit of vinegar in there, which might be a little different taste. But otherwise, 1 or 2 squirts gives you a little bit of tang. Here, it's a half a teaspoon, or in this case, triple recipe, I'm adding 1.5 teaspoons. Black pepper, I say go easy on this. I'm just going to put a pinch in here for right now. Let's just say mine was quite tasty the other day when I put like 1 teaspoon because I thought it could handle it, right? I could handle it, but barely. So a pinch, you're good to go on that. Star of the show is some beef broth. You can either use whatever your favorite beef broth is, or in this case, I use Better Than Bouillon beef. Normally 1 cup. In my case, I'm using 3 cups because I want quite a bit. Okay, so I already made it according to the directions. I'm just going to go ahead and pour it in here. And I'm just going to go ahead and let this just blend all together. It's going to be great. My main goal on this is we're going to bring it up to a boil. I'm not going to be in too much of a hurry here. I'm not going to have it up to like 10 and just have it boiling really fast. I want to go ahead and take a few minutes for it to happen because I want the onions, even though the onions cooked in the pan and any juice and residue and stuff is going to get into the broth, I want to milk them for what I can. I didn't put them in raw because I don't want somebody to bite into one if it didn't cook enough. Otherwise, that's just how I am. But anyways, once this comes up to a boil, then I'm going to go ahead and add a thickener. You can add flour. In my case, I'm going to add cornstarch. So I'll show you that in just a few minutes. Now that our gravy, in this case it's still sauce, is boiling, we're going to be mixing in a cornstarch slurry. I have about 1/3 cup of cold water, and I have about 2 heaping tablespoons of cornstarch, just based on the amount of liquid I have. If you are only making a single batch of the gravy, then I'd recommend doing 1 tablespoon or a little bit less, and then seeing how it thickens up, then you can always add more. The reason why you want to add this as a cold liquid is it'll prevent clumping. If you were to just pour the cornstarch straight in there, or flour or cornstarch, then you'd have a high risk of clumps, and then it would be hard to get those out. So we're going to go ahead and add this now. We'll go ahead and pour this in. And then we're going to go ahead and start whisking this, and it should start thickening up very quickly. I tend to leave mine a little more liquidy if I'm pouring it over rice, for example, but over mashed potatoes, I want it, obviously a little more thicker. So I think this is doing good. I'm going to go ahead and take this off the heat now, and I'm going to go ahead and get my mashed potatoes ready. Okay, the gravy looks wonderful, and we added the Salisbury steaks into there just so they have a moment to absorb all the greeniness that they deserve, right? So they're all nice and warm in there, and we're getting ready to plate this. All right, so we got some mashed potatoes all fired up there. So let's go ahead and get one of these steaks on here. This stuff is so great. Oh, and I've been holding out on you. This stuff smells wonderful. When the gravy was simmering, you could just smell all the stuff in there. So it is going to be fabulous, right? And because we have plenty of gravy, I can pretty much just drizzle it all over. Got mushrooms, got onions. Here we go. So I think that's enough. That's worthy, right? Now let's go ahead and put just a little bit of parsley on here as a garnish for some color here. All right, now for the fun part, right? We get to take a sample here. So right now, the steak just looks fabulous. It's got tons of gravy. And I'm biting into it. It's got good texture. The onion soup gives a flavor without overpowering it. So it's not just blah meat. It's got really good oniony flavor, but the gravy just gives it so many layers of flavor. It's incredible. The Banquet TV dinner stuff that I used to love growing up and everything was just salty goo. I think the number one ingredient in it was MSG, which is horrible for you. This stuff here is just wonderful. In fact, I'm going to take another bite here. Mashed potatoes. To me, this is comfort food at its finest. Salisbury steak is juicy, flavorful. The mashed potatoes, all the gravy that you ever need is just doing it justice. I don't think it can be done any better. So I really love this, and I hope you love it too. I hope you give it a try and leave a comment and all that good stuff. If you like this recipe, please subscribe, of course, and give us a thumbs up, give us a like, and comment below. And visit our website at amylearnstocook.com. And we're also on Twitter and Pinterest at Amy Learns to Cook. Oh yeah. That's great.